My name is Charles Kelley, and I'm a Latvian-American. I would like to invite you to join me right now on a special walk through my Riga. We're going to see special places of historic and cultural importance. I'm going to share with you some personal memories and some interesting historical tidbits that many people don't know. And I'll show you some places that even most native Latvians haven't seen. Come, enjoy. We've now crossed the street from Kalns Park, and we're officially in Old Town. And this is the Jakobs Barracks. This area was built for the Russian imperial troops in the late 1700s. And it's the place where the Russian army lived until Latvia became free in 1918. And then for 22 years, the Latvian soldiers lived here. And then, of course, in 1940, Soviet soldiers lived in these buildings. In 41, German soldiers lived here until 44 when they were driven out by the Soviets. And from 44 to 91, the Soviet army lived here. And when they left in 91, they really trashed the place. Now it's no longer barracks, but it's a high rent zone. There are very expensive apartments. Ambassadors have lived here. Very exclusive offices and shops and restaurants are here as well. This place is situated right outside the old city wall, which used to have lots of towers. And the most important and the largest of all the towers is the Powder Tower. And that's what's right behind me now. And it's a place where ammunition and gunpowder was kept, and it was a place of war. If you look carefully at the Powder Tower, you can see that there are 2 cannonballs that have been implanted way up by one of the windows. A child once asked me if those are real. Yes, they're real. But they were put there by hand. They weren't simply caught by the tower. Because when a cannonball came, it came with great force and it would destroy what it would hit. Behind me is a section of the old fortress wall. But it's kind of new looking. It's because it was reconstructed. But most of the wall has disappeared. There's only 2 sections. This kind of gives a feel of what it was like to approach this wall if you were an enemy soldier. And of course, on the top of the walls were places where Latvians would defend the city. This was a formidable place. In fact, many people don't know, in the early 1800s, Napoleon's army tried to conquer Riga, and they put it under siege, and the French were never able to enter Riga at all. It was one of the losses of the Napoleon Wars. It's interesting that when they decided to tear down the wall and to reconstruct it, that they actually stopped the wall in the middle of the air. And then about 100 years ago, a war museum was built between the Powder Tower and the old wall. The architecture here is so fascinating that it's shocking almost that you just show the wall and you stop it in the midair. It's like a bridge to nowhere. Well, again, during the 17th century, the Swedes occupied Latvia. And here's a cannon from that occupation. This is a real cannon. And when there's lots of people here, including children, this is a favorite place for kids to climb on. I would have climbed on it too when I was younger. Now I just lean on it. Now I want to show you why there are windows at the level of our feet. What a crazy place to put a window. And why the doors are below the streets. Take a look at them and look at the door. I wonder why. These buildings are very, very old, and they were built before sewer systems were put in the old city. So around the 1860s or 70s, it was decided that sewer systems would be put in the old city, and rather than digging in the streets, they put the pipes on top of the street and then filled above it, and the first floor was lowered. And underneath the first floor is the basement. And so it's like they have two basements today. But that's why there's windows at the level of our feet. Well, it could be that you think since the wall looks so new that really the fortress isn't as old as I've said it was. Well, I want to prove to you that it's really, really old. Come and look over the fence, and let's look down at the level that the ground was when they first started building the wall. Look how low that is. I wonder why. Why is it so low? Well, of course, you heard me talk about the sewers and how that raised the floor of the street. But there's something else. Over the centuries, all over the world, every year, dust settles in small amounts. So every 10 years, the earth is a little bit higher and higher and higher. So you look at 800 years of the accumulation of global dust. And it makes the old buildings look lower than they should be. Now, if you've ever been to Rome and the Forum is 2,000 years old, it's even lower. Or if you've been to Athens, where the ruins are even 3,000 years old, it's lower yet. This is one of the most interesting places. It's called the Swedish Gates. And of course, you see the cannons here, and then you see the opening that goes further into the interior of the old city. Why was the gate made? There was a house here, and the house was turned into a gate, into an entrance into the old city. And it was made in 1698, as the little relief says up here. That's the year that the Swedish king came. And it is said that these gates were made to honor the presence of the king. Now, the Latvians didn't like their Swedish rulers. And there was a teenage girl who was in love with the Swedish boy. And there was a lot of pressure on the girl to forsake the boy, but she refused. And so, as they did in the Middle Ages, she was interred into the wall right above the gate, which meant that she was put in an enclosed area where she couldn't get out unless she would recant her love for the Swedish boy. And so she refused to do it. For the rest of her life, as long as she had breath, she was heard saying, "I love you, I love you, I love you." And today, when the wind is right, when the moon is right, and when your heart is right, when you walk through the Swedish gates, you can still hear the maiden cry, "I love you." But you can't talk as you go through the Swedish gates. Let's see if your heart is right. hear her? Well, maybe you heard her, maybe you didn't, but it's an important place because a few years ago, there was an I Love You bakery over there. Now it's out of business. But there is an I Love You bar over there where you can get stuff to drink and good food to eat because the I Love You legend is fun. This is a great place for me to talk to you about the old cobblestones of the old town. Around the 14th century, when they started to put the cobblestone streets in the city, they decided to tax the people who came into the city. And the tax was, you had to bring 2 stones. They didn't have to be of the same variety or of the same size. But the tax to come into the city was to give 2 stones, and those stones were placed randomly on the streets. And for hundreds of years, that's how the cobblestones looked. But in more recent history, it was decided that the cobblestones should be more uniform, and they should be placed in a more orderly way. Of course, I like that. It's much easier and safer to walk on these cobblestones than it is to walk on the random cobblestones. We're at the intersection of Trokšņu and Aldru iela. Trokšņu, it means noisy. Of course, any street that's next to the soldiers' barracks is going to be noisy, especially if you add beer to the equation. Aldru. This is the street where the beer was made, and there's a brewery just this way. It's the white building to the right. It's very, very old. It's been refurbished, but it looks really, really cool. As we continue to walk on Aldru iela, we're getting further and further away from Trokšņu, which is Noisy Street. So let's turn right on Maza Trokšņu Street. And what does that mean? That means little noise. I guess they're not quite as drunk when they get here, and they're quieter. And they start walking down this street, and what do they see? They see St. Jacob's Church. And that's our next stop. My name is Charles Kelley, and this is My Riga, and I hope that you come and visit one day. I'll be happy to see you and take you on a personal walking tour.